It was the night of the devastating Rapid City flood. 238 people lost their lives, and echoes of that night still exist all around us. We bring you another story of a man who survived the nightmare of 72.
My name is Pat Beaudette. I was born and raised in Rapid City, lived through the 1972 flood. We had lived in the first residential neighborhood below Canyon Lake Dam.
18-year-old Pat was home from college. It had been raining hard all day.
My father looks at me, he says, "We got to get out of here." He said, "We're getting in the car, we're leaving."
The Beaudette family, along with family friend 14-year-old Jamie Johnson, all piled into the car.
Hey everybody. Tater and I are going to go down to Canyon Lake today, once it stops raining. And we're going to bring you the story of the Beaudette family and Jamie Johnson. Now, the Beaudettes consisted of the parents, Robert and Nora, and they had 3 kids home that night. Patrick was 18, he was home from college, and their twins, Becky and Peter, who were 13. And Peter had his friend, Jamie Johnson, over for the night. And they lived, the Beaudette family, they lived at 3808 Riverdale. And that is now part of the golf course. Where Park Drive is, that was pretty much where their house was, or maybe it was Riverdale. I will be showing you that when I go down there. So effectively, their house was part of Canyon Lake. I guess part of their yard may have looked out on Canyon Lake Park. I'm not sure exactly where their house was. I just know it was on Riverdale Drive. Of course, that is no longer there, like I just said. So I've had to go on rcgov.org, and they have a interactive flood map, and they show you what Rapid City looked like immediately after the flood. They have it in a gray area, the whole floodplain, and they show you where houses were and what structures were removed, and also roadways that were removed. The only thing they don't show, which I wish they would, was the names of the streets. So I've had to figure those things out by going through other people's stories, and the best I can tell is they lived kind of near, Jackson Boulevard. So, that night, I think, Pat was home, and the parents were home, and they went down to Canyon Lake Dam to check out the water, the storm. It was raining pretty good, of course. So Dad Robert went over to his neighbor's house, a guy named Bill Evert, and they had some coffee and everything, and they were talking about maybe we should go down and look at the dam. So they did that, decided, okay, well, back in 62 they had a flood, and it only flooded their backyard, so they weren't really too concerned about the issue then. So about 10:30 or so, everybody was back at the house after checking out the dam, and it really started to rain, and they started getting freaked out. So they said, let's get in the car and let's get the heck out of here. So their plan was to go on Riverdale, and go north on 38th Street across Jackson Boulevard. So in the front seat was Robert and Pat and Nora. And in the back seat was Becky, Jamie, and Peter. So as soon as they pulled out of the driveway, it seemed like their cars just started to float. And so they're floating all the way down, hitting debris and all this. And they get to the intersection of 38th and Riverdale. And they decided to bail out of the car. So they kind of washed out of there, that intersection, and to the next block, which was called Franklin Street. And the kids all got out of the car, and they were floating around. And the oldest, Pat, is trying to grab his sister and brother and Jamie. And the kids ended up in Fred Morrow's house, which was right on the corner of Franklin and 38th Street. So there were also a group of other people that washed into Fred Morrow's house, including Fred Morrow and his son Danny, I think his name was. And there was a amputee in there. There was another child. Anyway, there was a group of people with the Beaudettes and Jamie. And what ended up happening is they just struggled to remain above water. I guess the walls started caving in, and the ceiling fell. And once the back wall went, the little kids, Becky, Jamie, and Peter, all floated out. And so Pat, I guess the roof fell on him or something, and he was knocked out. And apparently he opened his eyes, or came to, and he saw a light in the roof or whatever, and he was able to crawl out. So Pat was able to get on top of the roof, and he noticed the next house, which was Sorensen's house, and there were people on there, but he couldn't see his parents or anybody he knew on top of that roof. So he jumped to the Sorensen house, but as soon as he did, the house exploded and he had to jump to the next roof. So Peter and Becky, when the first house went, they exploded out of there. Apparently Becky ended up in a poplar tree. Peter had a harder time. He was struggling in the water for a while, trying to grab onto stuff. He grabbed onto an old pickup truck, I believe it was. And that floated up to the third house, where I believe his parents were. Well, at least his dad and some other people. And Robert was able to pull Peter up onto that house. And so Nora, I believe, was in a tree as well. And I think her husband got her down onto that roof too. So they ended up on the third house, which was the Lodmell house. So they spent the night on that roof with about 30 other people, the Beaudette family. Now, in the first house, in Fred Morrow's house, when that went, Jamie and the older gentleman had been washed out. And Jamie passed, of course. I don't know about the older gentleman. I think he survived, actually. Maybe he died. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Jamie was the only fatality in that group that night. In the Beaudette family, if you will. So, what I'm going to do, me and Tater, we're going to go down there, and I'm going to show you where approximately the houses were standing. I can't go on the golf course because, of course, it's trespassing, but I can show you from the sidewalk, and I will try and show you exactly where the streets were and where the houses stood. So, stay tuned. Alright guys, here we are, Canyon Lake. Right where we're standing is approximately where Riverdale Drive was. Alright. Of course, Park Drive was not here. That's pretty obvious. So right where Park Drive here was pretty much where the houses were. So we're gonna go across the street near the golf course, and I'll show you where all this stuff happened. Remember that all this here was part of Canyon Lake Park back in 1972. Okay, so Riverdale Drive circled around all the way down this way, came around this way, and all the way over here. Okay, so sorry if I'm giving you motion sickness. Alright, back to our regular scheduled programming. Had to take a break because Tater had to poop. I swear, every time she goes to a park, even if she had poop before we left, she gotta poop in the park. Okay. We are walking on the sidewalk. That was probably someone's front yard back in 1972. This would have been approximately where the Beaudette house was. Well, I can't really see because of this large earthen berm that they had to make to keep any future floodwaters at bay. But this would have been somebody's backyard, quite possibly the Beaudettes. Alright, so they must have pulled out of their driveway here, and we're gonna come to the intersection where they had to bail out, and they were washed into the Morrow's house. Okay, across the street here, you can see that's Rapid City Medical Center, a clinic. The parking lot, 38th Street, used to run through what their parking lot is right now. How do I know this? Well, that's 38th Street over there. And the map that I told y'all about on the government, or the city website, I should say, it indicated that 38th Street ran about this way. So we're probably standing right approximately where 38th Street ran, through here. Okay, now you see that tree right there? That is approximately where the Morrow's house stood. So that would have been the intersection of 38th and Franklin right there. That is the house where the young Beaudettes and Jamie Johnson ended up. Alright. The next door, right about there, would have been Sorensen's. And over here between those two trees right there, that little mound, that would have been the Lod Mills house where they all ended up on that night. really kind of hard to tell through the chain link here, but of course those berms weren't there. It was a little more flat. Over here, of course, would have been Franklin Street. Kind of came around, and then 38th Street ran through here, and then Riverdale Drive. Over there, of course, you can't see it because of the berm. That is where the Beaudette story happened. When Jamie Johnson was washed away, unfortunately. So now I'll be taking you to Jamie Johnson Field, which was named after Jamie, and where allegedly his body was discovered after the flood. This is Jamie Johnson Field. Now, Jamie was a player for the Jeeps team, Canyon Lake Little Leaguer, and apparently, after he was washed out of the Morrill House, he ended up here. And subsequently, they decided to name the field after him. Now, some of you may know that I'm in contact with Dr. Crowder. If you watched my previous video on the Crowder family. And he wasn't the one that brought Jamie to me. Jamie was 13, and most of the children that died in the flood all crossed over without a problem, according to Dr. Crowder. It was actually my dog, Lucy. A few months after she died, she brought Jamie to me and said, "Mom, Jamie wants his story told." So I did a story on him last year, and that was on TikTok. So now I'm bringing you the story now because he was involved with the Beaudette story. Now, Jamie's family, after he died, of course, had a very hard time. According to his brother Daryl, they moved to San Diego in the fall of 1972. And the family did not cope well. It basically destroyed the family. And it's very sad because back then, of course, they don't have grief counseling like they do today. Yeah. But if it's any consolation, Jamie is just fine. He's at peace. And everybody who knew him and loved him can take comfort in that. Now, he was buried in Mountain View Cemetery, but I've not been able to find his grave as of yet. So maybe if I do find it later, I will film it. Right where the Crowder family is in the cemetery, that's where a lot of the victims of 72 flood were buried. So he might be in that section. Okay, so that is the story of the Beaudette family and Jamie Johnson. Rest in peace, Jamie.